I think it's time we start granting attorneys' fees. I knew Dolan would like that, but Bob, you're going to probably be paying more. So, all right. Listen, it's hard to say, but one of the problems that we have in our system now is that you do have attorneys. What's the old joke? Attorney runs into a judge. Hey, judge, I got to file an appeal. I just discovered some information. The judge looks at him in a panic and goes, what? I just found out my client still had $5,000 more. All right? Now think about it. Loser pay is a good way to go. Now the judge has to balance it. You got to stay inside the rules. As someone that's done this kind of work for the last 20 plus years, I think it's the right way to go. It'll really make people think twice about bringing some of this litigation, and it'll force people to sit on the table. And I think that's a healthy thing for our system.
Mr. Shirley?
In answering that question, you have to realize too that statutes play into the equation as well as if it's a contract case, that kind of thing. So you're going to have the legal authority to require the loser to pay, which may require some statutory adjustments. Having loser pay is a good thing, but I think what a lot of courts have gone to is a model similar to what Kevin's talked about, and that's requiring mediation in cases where they are required to sit down with a trained mediator and mediate the cases out. When you go up to the Supreme Court on a civil case, they require you to mediate before they actually hear the case. And so I think there's lots of alternatives out there other than just loser pay. I think that there are other ways that you could deal with it as well that would aid in moving those cases along. And some of that mediation doesn't have to be a formalized program. It can be the judges intervening and conducting those mediations. So, thank you very much.
All right. Mr. Pasquale?
All you got to do is look at the local paper to see a good example of frivolous litigation. My opinion on frivolous litigation is very, very clear. And loser pays is a very valid concept. Right now it's available to judges in most cases. In some cases there's already mandatory loser pays. But if you have compelled mandatory loser pays on frivolous litigation, it's going to decrease frivolous lawsuits. Now, you have to worry about one thing when you say that. You don't want to have a chilling effect on people's access to the courts. And so you make darn certain that the litigation is in fact actually frivolous. But once that determination has been made, then I hope the other guy kept copies of his time and copies of the bills that he's had, because he's going to get that back.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions that we have out there?
I've done jury trials before a judge with the JAF system, the recording system, and I've done jury trials with a court reporter. I would never go with the recording over a court reporter. There comes too many inaudibles, and the record is not accurate. And the court reporter's record is entirely accurate. They're verbatim and they're on point. And so to get rid of the court reporters would be a huge, huge mistake. You talk about public access, and I agree that the public can come in and see direct comments on the record. The other thing about the court reporter that's really nice is that the judge can go back and refresh his recollection of what's happened, or the attorneys can. And there's many times that we've gone in for a probation violation, and the judge has the defendant before him, and we go and we look at the transcripts, and Kevin can vouch for me on this. You look at the transcripts and the judge said, you come back before me again, you're going to regret it, you're going to go to prison, or whatever. We pull out those transcripts and read them to the judge, because they're accurate and they're something that provides you with a record that is easy to look at, and it's easy to understand, and it's easy to read. And the JAF system might have its place in certain hearings, but the big hearings, the hearings that are important, you really have to have a court reporter there It might be a little more expensive, but the record is such a greater quality that you really have to have it.
Thank you. Mr. Plimpton?
There's no question about it. In fact, there's been some debate in the past about whether we were going to go to this new system. I can tell you firsthand, as someone that's done cases in front of the Nevada Supreme Court, the Ninth Circuit, and it is more expensive, but we actually have to stay with the reporter. I think I saw her here tonight. Let me go on record by telling you I'm planning on keeping her. All right, so let's not quibble about that anymore. All right, no more rumor, innuendo. All right, I'm going to keep the reporter. She does a great job. We've got great court staff, and it's really the best way to do things. And it's really what you as citizens, when you go into the courtroom, you deserve that. You need a real-time record to go back and read, especially when you're doing motion practice and those kind of things in front of a judge. So there you have it.
Thank you. How about you, Mr. Pasquale?
I'm glad my younger colleagues agree with me. I grew up in the day of court reporters, and it's how I was trained. It's what I live by. My first judge that I ever worked for as a law clerk once advised me, says, Kevin, when you get out there in the world and you're an attorney, you make sure you've got a court reporter in that courtroom. And he's right, because these guys are right. That record is critical. I've already talked to the court reporter for this court because she was worried about that same question. And I told her the same thing I'm telling you and the same thing I'd tell these guys and anybody else. A courtroom isn't a courtroom without a court reporter. You can't get a read back from a machine. You can from a court reporter. You can't thumb through and find things on a machine that you get from a court reporter. We've been in trials where daily reporting was required, so that the issues were so complex during the trial part of the day. That night, you had a verbatim transcript of what was covered, and that is essential to achieving justice. So yeah, I want a court reporter, and not just for you, Dee, and the rest of the press. I want it for me because it makes a better record. You know, the Second Amendment to the Constitution is near and dear to, I think, everybody in this room's heart. I don't think that any of us here are ever going to quibble with the right to bear arms. It is something that was granted to us in our Constitution. It's among the first of the amendments, you know, Amendment number 2, because it was so important to our founding fathers to have that included in our charter documents that they included it themselves. Obviously, I don't think there's any of us candidates, and I doubt anybody in this room who ever wants to abridge those rights.
Thank you.